Alright, here are the solutions. That was number 1. So, you have, let's write it like this, f of x is equal to 1 plus 6 root x. That's what you have. This is the main part of the question. So you can write it down like that. You can see that you have to apply your basics here. So f of x is equal to 1 plus 6x to the half. You remember we told you there's a 2 there and there's a 1 there, and that 2 becomes the denominator. That 2 becomes the denominator. So that's your question now. So your derivative is f prime x is equal to. This is a constant, so its derivative is 0. I'm just writing it for fun. Now, half times 6 will give you 3. Put it in your calculator. Write down x. Half minus 1, put it in your calculator. You'll get minus half. So that final answer is actually 3x to the minus half. So that was number 1. Alright, now we're doing number 2. Number 2, y is equal to 8 minus 3x to the 6 all over 8x to the 5. Now, you cannot do this like this. You will have to divide. So remember something, you've got to divide this by that and that by that. So the question will become y is equal to 8 over 8x to the 5 minus 3x to the 6 over 8x to the 5. And that will cancel off. You'll be left with 1 over x to the 5. Because remember you got 1 there and 1 there. And on this side you'll have minus. This is 3 over 8. So there's 3 over 8. And here you got x to the 6 divided by x to the 5. Write down x. 6 minus 5 will give you 1. So that's your final question. Right? Now, you know that this is really, from your basics, x to the minus 5. And this is the same thing. Right. So now we can find the answer. Right. So let's focus on this part over here. Right. So we want the answer. So dy by dx is equal to minus 5 times 1 will give you minus 5. Write down x. Now minus 5 minus 1 will give you minus 6. Now this 1 times minus 3 will give you minus 3 over 8. And that will become x. 1 minus 1 will give you x to the 0. X to the 0 I can ignore. So that's your final answer for number 2. Alright, we're just going to give you a few seconds to have a look at them and to think about them. Right, we're going to now move on to number 3. Right, let's move to number 3. In number 3, you had y is equal to x plus 5 all over root of x. Once again, you have to divide. So your question becomes x over root x plus 5 over root x. That becomes x. This becomes x to the half. So you see how important the basics are. Plus 5 over x to the half. Now you are dividing here. The index there is 1. So you'll write down x. You're dividing. 1 minus half will give you half. And here 5, and here actually a 1 is understood. So 5 over 1 is really 5. And this x to the half, when it comes to the top, becomes x to the minus half. So that's now your question. So you are finding dy by dx. Half times the 1 that is understood here is half. Write down x. Half minus 1. Half minus 1 will give you minus half. Half times plus 5 will give you minus 5 over 2. Write down the x. Half minus 1 will give you minus 3 over 2. This answer could also be written as 0, 5x to the negative 0, 5 minus 2, 5x to the minus 1, 5. Just in case you converted them into decimal fractions. Alright, so if you left it in fractions, that's your answer. If you brought it to decimal fractions, that's your answer. Alright, just take a few seconds, digest that. And now we are going to move on to number 4 in our next session. So a few seconds for you to look at that. Just try and understand what happened and then